Hi, this is Greg Lewis, the city manager in Lebanon, and I welcome you here. We are now in the wonderful month of April, and we have a special show today. We're going to go into partnering that happens between the city and police and school, the Lebanon School District, talk about school support officers and what the role is. And I welcome my guests, and as we'll go around the table and introduce ourselves. And as always, even though Gail and I have been here before, we'll say something about ourselves a little bit so people are aware. Some people don't really. I'm Greg Lewis. I'm city manager, and it's amazing that I am a city manager because I was sent to community college by my parents to become a veterinarian. And so I guess I was very good with animals. So I guess if someone's very good with animals, that would lead them naturally to be into city management, maybe. I don't know. Though I have been doing really well with a lot of the animal issues, with regard to cemeteries and such. We haven't solved all those problems yet. But that being said, I welcome Gail, and we'll go with you, Gail, and tell a little bit about yourself.
Thank you.
We know our great superintendent.
Thank you, Greg. I'm Gail Paluti. I'm superintendent for SAU 88 in Lebanon School District. We service students in Lebanon from pre-K to 12, students in Grantham for 7 through 12, and students in Plainfield from 9 through 12. This is finishing my third year as superintendent here. Prior to that time, I have had many roles in education. I've been a teacher at all different levels, building administrator, assistant superintendent, and I think this is probably my 41st year in education.
Oh, congratulations, that's great. Well, Gail and I, we get together monthly and have some a business lunch where just the two of us talk about our school and our city and how important all the community is to us. And so we appreciate when we join together like this. And so now we'd like to have the officers kind of introduce themselves and maybe their little background, how they got into the business of being a police officer, and then specifically as to their current role in our police department and what they do. So we'll start around the table like that.
My name's Greg Partham. I'm a police officer with the Lebanon Police Department. Much like you, I had an interesting journey. I graduated with a degree in engineering. Did that for a few years. Wasn't quite what I thought it would be. It didn't make me happy. Had an opportunity to open a franchise up with my wife now, then girlfriend. We opened up a pizza restaurant in Hooksett, New Hampshire. Did that for about a year and a half. Ran into some disagreements with the franchisor, and we sold it. And then I had the opportunity, to really think, what do I want to do? And I come from a long background of having family in public service, so I thought I would try police work. I had always been interested in it, and started the hiring process in a couple different places and got the job in Lebanon.
Great, Greg. Now, what do you do at the police department?
I'm currently the school resource officer. I believe this is my 5th year, if I'm correct, in doing it. So, but it's something I love, so I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah. And one of our purposes of our show was to get in the details of it. Okay. And I'm so glad you're here, Greg. As I was telling Gail, we talked about doing this, and I thought, well, this is an important matter. I mean, so many of us, we've raised our children, but so many of us yet are in our community, have our children, and we see some things happening all over the nation. And we're blessed here in Lebanon of having a school district the way we do, and a police department we had. To have a couple combinations of this quality of organizations is very rewarding and very much a credit to our community. We'll continue around the table.
Sean Freitas. I'm currently the patrol lieutenant with the Lebanon Police Department. This has pretty much been my career since I graduated college. And started my law enforcement career in the jail. Shortly thereafter, I got into law enforcement. Came to Lebanon in 2001, and throughout my different titles at the police department, I was also a school resource officer, actually the first one in Lebanon that started in 2005.
Oh, wow, good. That's really great. Well, as we start out the show, I think maybe some higher level types of how we got here from where we began. This all began before Gail and I arrived in this community, and I'm happy that it arrived in. I'm glad you're the beginning, Sean, and Greg, you're now our current person in this capacity. But from your perspective as superintendent, Gail, What do you see about this program and its value in our schools and with the bigger picture of caring for our community?
Sure. I think we're very fortunate to have the opportunity to have school resource officers in our school district. And I wasn't superintendent when Sean was here, and I'm sure he was a great one, but Greg is absolutely a fantastic school resource officer. We really appreciate all the work that he does. I was fortunate to have school resource officers in every school district I've worked in to date, so I know and appreciate the work that a school resource officer can do. School resource officers are unique in that I think they have a really valuable role in providing a positive face to the school district and to the students and to the faculty and the community in our schools. They're really respected and looked up to by our students and our faculty and our staff, and they're really a source of confidential matters with students and faculty and staff, and they really provide the guidance and the support in a positive way, but also with the presence of law enforcement in our schools. And I think the positive relationships really help students and families be able to turn to law enforcement for situations that occur maybe outside of the school district. And I know for myself as superintendent, it's great to have them. And Greg as our school resource officer, and Sean also, we can always pick up the phone and call and get support and questions answered to help our families, which is really what I see their role as being for us. So.
Well, that's really good. It's really good to hear, you know, both your past experience in working with officers in your school districts that you've been involved as leader and as a teacher. Before we get to the nitty-gritty on the ground, Sean, I know we have to, anything we do, it's the age-old thing of putting people in the field and providing the support and what they need to do their job. Could you comment as a lieutenant on our patrol responsibilities of what kind of support do we have from our police department toward this program, and what kind of guidance do we have from our police department to our officers on the ground when they play the role that currently Greg's playing that you played previously?
The police department is very dedicated to the program. Again, going back to 2005 when we first put it in motion in conjunction with the school district. It is a unique position in and of itself. If you look at the school district, it is a community in and of itself as well. Much like Lebanon is. In the city of Lebanon, you have the whole police force, and the school district basically has Greg as the first piece of the puzzle for them as law enforcement. The officers on the streets do have a tendency to rely on Greg for different things that happen within the school, and vice versa. You know, Greg always makes contacts with the patrol officers because you do deal with similarities. Once the kids go home, they're now the patrol guys see them firsthand instead of Greg. So there is a lot of information sharing that goes on. As far as training goes, it's a constant learning scale day to day. The officers might not be as versed with the school settings as Greg is. He does go to select trainings for school resource officers. But in the end, through communication and you know, talking with one another, that's how we really get all our information sharing down, and you try to bring what happens in the school back to the department, you know, each day or on a specific incident that comes through.
I think the role of that communication, it seems really is a real virtue by your effort and the effort that you're making for us on the ground, Greg. Because communication is such an important feature of a community that's safe and secure, and makes a place where our students in our schools and then in the community, that they can find safe places, and sometimes there's difficult circumstances, and this provides them another outlet, and it provides us another means of getting information so we can be of help and serve them. And so that's really, really nice. Let's go into on the ground a little bit now, and I think we'll do that for a while, and then we'll kind of open up to maybe some of the issues of our times and see how we might be feeling about those. But I don't know if everyone understands what you do then, Greg, on a day-to-day basis, and what kind of the details of that situation. I think
Right.
That maybe people have some ideas, and some of them may be correct, and some of them may not be so correct. But would you like to share that and just give some insight for the residents here in Lebanon that watch our show?
Sure, and that's what we are. We are trying to educate the public in general, just so there's no misunderstandings or assumptions made about the position. But I mean, I've gone from talking to students to talking to parents to, like I mentioned earlier, I'd been on the radio before, now the TV. So every little bit does help us in getting the message out there. But it is still, even though we've been here, and the position's existed since 2005, it's still a relatively new position overall as far as police work in conjunction with the school systems. As a school resource officer, I was actually trained, my basic training and a lot of my additional trainings have been through the NASRO. It stands for the National Association of School Resource Officers. And as part of that, they teach a triad concept, which is the law enforcement piece, the teaching piece, and then the counseling piece. So if you think about, law enforcement, that makes sense. You're there to keep everybody safe, to provide a level of protection, to investigate any sorts of crimes that come up. And by law, New Hampshire law does require school districts, with very few exceptions, it requires them to report almost all crimes. So it really makes it a lot easier for them to deal with one person kind of as a liaison to the police department versus multiple officers coming and going and disrupting the day. So the law enforcement piece is fairly simple. I think a lot of people can make that assumption, maybe don't understand all the fine details of how it works, but they understand what a law enforcement officer does in general. The teaching portion, get into classrooms when I can, when I'm available, when the teachers will have me in, talk about different subjects. It could be anything. I've talked about constitutional law. We've had, just a little side note here, but it's a great opportunity for some other police officers to make their way in as well. I've had officers come in to talk about accident reconstruction in science classes, officers in Spanish classes. We do have a Spanish-speaking officer. And then, I've gone into advisories. I've done everything all the way down to some basic self-defense moves with kids just to show them some of our training. But whatever I can get into class, just to continue to build those relationships. And that's what it's all about, like you had mentioned, the communication, but to build the relationships with the students so they understand not only can they trust me, but they can trust any of us out there in the community. So as they move forward, they understand that police are here to help. We're not the enemy, which is sometimes, especially at the high school level, a lot of people or a lot of kids will look at it that way. Oh, they're out to get me, that kind of attitude, and we're really not. We're here to help. And then there's the counseling piece, which is, obviously I'm not a trained psychologist, psychiatrist. I'm not asking you to lay down on a couch, but some kids do feel more comfortable coming to me, especially if it's something that might be a family secret or something that maybe certain school officials don't know. Or I've even had a kid say once, well, if I tell a teacher, then that teacher might tell other teachers, whether in the teacher's lounge or whatever, which isn't always the case. Teachers are very good with confidentiality as well, but there are kids that just feel more comfortable, and for some reason there's certain kids that are just attracted to that law enforcement, whether it's something they want to do as an adult or not. So basically, but just to be another person in the school environment that can have those conversations with students, that can find out what's troubling them, can help them solve them. And if I'm not the person to do that, then by all means, I'm going to refer them. I'm just one resource, and we have numerous resources in the school system. So I will either team up with someone else, or I will just suggest they go and speak, or point them in the right direction to get additional help, and then just follow up and ensure that they're getting it.
Well, I think that provides an option in our community, and I love that. It's another option, because the more options we provide for people to engage, and for me, students are the people of our community as an adult would be, in the sense that they need to have options, and this provides them a good situation. In terms of the nitty gritty, what's a work week look like for you?
It can actually, it's generally pretty busy. It can vary though. I mean, you can have your day where there's not a lot going on. You're getting out, walking around the halls, trying to peep into some classrooms. And it varies greatly too which school I'm in, because I do 4 days a week at the high school, and then on Tuesdays I'm primarily out of the middle school. And I'm also available to the other schools. They know to call if something comes up, and I will respond there, or I will help them and assist however I can, whether it's over the phone or in person. So I do get into the elementaries at times. But typically most of the issues with students, especially if it is a law enforcement related issue, are at the higher levels, middle school or especially the high school. But it could be anything. Today, like I was saying earlier, there was an arrest made at school, which is very rare, to be honest, very, very rare. And typically, even if we have an incident happen at school, we don't generally arrest. We'll go ahead and we'll type up a warrant and complaint and kind of do it the slower process, and then follow up with that individual. If the warrant is signed off on, the arrest warrant was signed, can you come in? Can we plan a time you come up to the police department and process you? Or if it's more of a minor violation, it might just be, we call them 3x5s. You just issue them the paperwork with a court date, or sometimes it's just a warning or a counseling type situation. But you never know what you're going to get. And like I said, the arrests are very rare, but there's, especially in school, we try to avoid that. We don't want to embarrass anybody. We try to be discreet. And we try to protect people's rights. And a school, it is a community within itself. And especially at that level, you have a lot of drama. And we try to reduce that as much as possible. But it can vary greatly. I mean, I've gone into gym classes in the past, interact with students, and kind of, that's a great way, because you're kind of playing on their level, and they're thinking you as another person. And that's, I think, the biggest thing. I'm not sure about Lieutenant Freitas was first working there, but I had heard some stories and a lot of questions about carrying a gun or a weapon on school campus. And to be honest, I only ever had one teacher say something about it, and she actually, her thing was, do you bring a weapon to school? And I looked down and I said, and she looked at it and she said, oh, I never even noticed it before. And I think that's what happens. The kids, they do accept you, they get to know you, they accept you as another member of that community and that staff, and they don't look at you, necessarily as a I mean, you're still that authority figure, but you're not the enemy. You're just another figurehead, and you're someone they can talk to, which is the idea.
Well, that's neat. Now, you said earlier, I think, Sean, were you the first officer?
I was.
Has things changed over the years? Excuse me.
I think probably the biggest change is the acceptance of now the officer in the school system. When I first got in 2005, there were always the mixed signals, the mixed messages, not really knowing, do we really need an officer in the school system? What's his role going to be? Can he really help us? Is it going to be a setup to arrest somebody later on down the road? So from that time to where we are now, there certainly has been an increase in the acceptance of the program, and like Greg had said, the students now see you for what you're there for, as an asset and as a resource to them. And I think one of those ways that it's helped is getting into the lower school, the levels. At the junior high level, middle school level, those kids already have seen him for a few years before they get to the high school, to where they see him for 4 days out of the week. And that certainly made a smoother transition as well.
Yeah, well, that's nice, because they can recall. I mean, and these things, people's the figures of people in your school life as you go through school. So it's something I think a lot of us always, and people should remember. I think we always remember certain things. And if you make a connection with an officer in a middle school setting, and then in the high school setting, which was sometimes going from middle school to high school, there is some issues, and I'm sure that the fact to see a familiar face in this particular role is somewhat reassuring. Gail, is there things you would like to make sure that we bring out with our talk with the officers today? I always want to make sure you have an opportunity
I guess I just want to support the whole program, because it has been a benefit to us in the Lebanon School District, and in prior districts I've worked in, we've been fortunate to have a school resource officer who was available at the elementary level, and that is extremely beneficial for so many reasons. And quite honestly, school resource officers that I've had that have been in elementary schools are really like celebrities. The kids just love it, and they really get to understand that police officers are for helping, and they can be a trusted confidant. And it does make the transition as they get older easier to be able to interact with law enforcement in whatever situation. So, I mean, ideally, my goal would be to have a school resource officer in every school. We're certainly always looking for any kind of grant funding that we can get to try to increase the presence of school resource officers.
Just a little bit on the subject of funding. How are we able to fund having officers come into the school? Where does the funding come from?
From the school district and the city.
And so we have a shared effort going
We
on
do.
there, don't we?
Yes.
Correct.
We do.
And I think that's one of our kind of objects that we're trying to do between Gail and myself and our school board and our council is try to find ways of helping one another. And this has been going on for some time, and it illustrates, when we can find a way to basically connect with each other, and because we serve we have different populations being served in some ways, but then generally we're asking for those who pay for it, same people. So we're showing people that these are things that work.
Yeah, it's absolutely an excellent collaborative effort between the city and the school district.
And the way you describe this, Greg and Sean, it's clear. It's what I call it's kind of community type policing. It's kind of community involvement, engagement. It's low key. I mean, this is not a glamorous thing or one that's gets hyperboles about what we're doing here. We're doing some basic police work. That's what's happening, and it's being done in basic schoolwork. So we're like doing basic police work and basic schoolwork at the same time, which is it's something that, because there was some, I know oftentimes in places that can be fearful. When you go through the initial stages until people get understanding what these are, is that there's hopefulness on it, and then there's some fearfulness on it about how that is, but really I think people should take to heart what just the way you both have described this thing, that this is really not the kind of thing where somebody would think that there is an overreaching by law enforcement into school educational systems. It's really compatible and complements each other, I would think. Would you think that? Have you heard any of that kind of discussions yourselves over the years you've been working in this area?
Yeah, I think it's almost one of those synergistic relationships, a little bit here and a little bit there, and you get more out of it. But I also wanted to say that, it makes a big difference in with who you're working with on the other end for us as well.
Yes.
I've heard some nightmare stories of SROs working with administrators that, would refuse to help them when it came to whether it was, doing their function in their search or their part of the investigation in school, or, really chastising officers for doing their job if it came down to an arrest or a confrontation with a student where their hands were basically tied. And I've had great people I'm working with as well. Nan Parsons at the high school, and you had Andy Mello and Martha Langill, and obviously Superintendent Paluti, and then Dan Poison. Those are the primaries that I work with as administrators, and we kind of all taught each other, I think, as we went through it. But I think without them being so supportive of the position, it wouldn't be as successful as it is.
Yes, that's a really, really good point. Well, maybe a little bit now. Let's go into some of the areas that you, people, and you. I think I welcome your thoughts, because you are the people with the professional background on what this might be. But I think one of the big gorillas or elephants in the room these days, and of course the national level debate, is about security for schools. Let's keep our schools safe, and coming into our schools, where there might be some aberrations, some aberrant behavior going on outside our schools, and then it comes into our schools, and then that has shown itself through such Sandy Hook devastating tragedy that no one could ever grasp how tragic when those matters arise. And there's been lots of discussion and real strong debate on all types of levels about whether there should be armed security officers in the schools. But as we described ourselves here in this discussion we've had, it's pretty clear that that's really what we're about.
Correct.
That's not what we're about in this, but this is it is bringing safety and security by connecting voices and making things aware. But there's a great big broad picture out there. So I wondered how everybody's reactions to this this current phenomena on just on the common sense level of our day-to-day work in our schools and our police and our officers that you play. Any feelings about this kind of situation in terms of your perspectives from as just persons that do it every day, in terms of the conversations about shooters coming into schools and things like that?
There's always the topics. Unfortunately, you see all the things on TV, the different articles of the different tragedies. I think one thing for us as law enforcement, it really comes down to communication. You really need people to keep us advised of if there's a suspicious person or any type of incident that makes them feel unsafe, to pick up the phone and call. I think one thing that gives us a little, maybe an edge with things, is having Greg in the school. And since we've been doing the program for so long now, the teachers have that comfort level as well of reaching out for the police or reaching out for Greg if they think that there's something going on or something that might be suspicious. So it really is just getting that word out there to people of, don't hesitate to pick up the phone and call, no matter what it might be. Mm-hmm. If you read something with all the social media these days, whether it's on Facebook or Twitter, if someone posts a comment, I have seen different people call in to just say, hey, I don't really know if this is anything, but this person just posted this on Facebook. So we start looking into it.
Yeah.
There are times when we've had to contact the school for those matters, and just the reverse, the school's contacted us as well. So again, it comes back to what we spoke of earlier, is that communication piece.
I think some of it too. I think some of it too is being proactive versus reactive, and a big part of what having school resource officers in our schools is doing is allowing us to be proactive around any type of situation rather than being reactive. So that's where I see a big importance to the role of having school resource officers, and the communication and collaboration with the department does allow us to pick up the phone when we're suspicious of something, so you can be proactive rather than reactive.
Yeah, and I know you have really you've thought through, and you have emergency procedures the school has adopted.
We do,
and that you've had to exercise them in the past, and so. And I know that our police and then our emergency managers in the city are supportive, and there's a lot of communication going on with regard to situations if they become basically it's abnormality. It's not something that we normally would ever see. Maybe we will never see it. Hopefully we won't. I guess that I think that kind of covers that. Is there anything else we should say on that subject?
I would just add that, I think that it's very important for parents to take away, or for the public to take away, that I am not walking through the school like a security guard, and any student or faculty member you ever speak to will tell you that. More than anything, you try to blend in so you can see what's going on around you. But I think you are there, you are a deterrent, and you're the first responder should something happen, which is beautiful. You're already there, and you're communicating with the outside police force should something happen. And there always is that potential. We live in a great community, but there is always a potential for some sort of violence to happen in the school environment. And what's great is we have wonderful protocols and drills. We're constantly doing drills for our emergency preparedness. And I was involved, and I think Lieutenant Freitas was on the team for quite a while, and like the fire chief and numerous school members of our emergency operations planning team, where we developed a lot of these again, the responses should there ever be an emergency. So I think we're very well prepared in that sense. But a lot of what I deal with now isn't just the violent acts or the criminal acts. A lot of it is that counseling portion and piece. So
that's nice. We have last couple of minutes. One topic that has come up, and I don't want to do injustice, but bullying. And bullying can be at all levels. It doesn't have to be the extreme violent type bullying, but it can vary at different times. And those who bully and those who are bullied in our worlds of life. And have you encountered any of that conversations with that kind of situation and having to be a resource if something like that might materialize in terms of what might show up.
I've definitely seen it quite frequently. It'll come to me, and it'll be reported to me. And if it does, or if I do believe it's bullying, but yet there's no criminal nature to it, there's no threatening, or it doesn't fall under any sort of a crime, then I will forward it, or even if not, I will make the faculty know. Generally, one of the administrators, who then will follow up with it as if it's a bullying investigation.
Absolutely.
They're investigating as a bullying incident.
We have a very strict bullying policy, so everything needs to be investigated.
And that again shows the connectivity between police and school, between our role of our officer and our role of our teachers and our principals. And I think that's really important. So it's to me, that's really balanced. It's a really balanced approach, and I think that the reasonableness of it is evident as we were talking here today. In our last minute or so, I'd like to have a kind of comment from your perspectives on the future, as to the future of this type of program and our schools and with the police department. Maybe we'll just go around the table. What's your thinking from your perspective, Sean, on the future of this type of programs?
I think it's only going to continue to grow and evolve. I think there's always going to be a need for the school district and the police department to work together. Again, the youth in the community are one day going to be the leaders of the community. So if we can get in tune with them at the early stage, it's going to benefit everybody together. So I truly think that it's going to be a program that's going to be able to be sustainable, hopefully for a long time into the future.
That's good. That's good, Greg.
I think it will grow, and I'd like to see it grow, and for the right reasons, kind of how we have it now. I think it's going to come down to financial issues, but I do believe that it would be beneficial to have someone dealing with the younger kids more often. It's actually one of my goals currently, is to try to find ways to get into the elementary schools, because that's where you start that connection with the young individuals, and then you work that up. Right now, I generally jump in at the used to be 7th grade level, now it's more the 5th grade level, but sometimes it's a struggle if those negative relationships already exist where the family might not support or be supportive of police.
That's good.
Yeah, and I would agree with everything that Sean and Greg had to say. It's certainly sustainable at the level that it's at. My goal would be to increase the opportunities for students and families and schools to be involved with the school resource officers in the program, because I believe that from very early on with students it can be extremely beneficial.
I really concur in all what you've said. I think that this is an important program that we in our community here, all of us who live here, should do all we can to support the community in its efforts, in the police department in their efforts, in the schools department in their efforts on this matter. It really is a positive way of working in our schools and having the kind of community we all want, and a safe place for the students here to go and receive their education and be successful. Last thing I enter with is oftentimes in these areas of life now with some uncertainty we see. I think that if people would, one caveat I was told, and I kind of believe it, is that if you see something, say something. Because wherever you are, whether you're in a school, where you're a citizen in the community, where you're a student here in our community, if you see something, say something. And we've given you other options now with officers in the school and with our teachers and with our administrators. There's lots of options. And I think that if we can find things that need to be addressed, if somebody will say something, there are people in the community, our police are not just, their police function is much broader, and they're having the neighborhood policing is one of our outcomes, and neighborhood means we go into the community. And so sometimes when you see things that have gone really wrong, it's because people would say later, oh, I saw that, I saw that coming, I saw this, I see this, and I saw it coming, and yet, I think say something. And when you do, there are people that are responsible people like at the table here, and those people will look into the matter. And it's all about us as a community really helping each other and doing that. And all you have to do is say something to us, and then we'll look into it. It may not be what you see, but perceive, but that's okay. We'd rather have you say something when you see it. With that, we'll end the show today. I want to thank the guests we have and commend the work of our officers who are being wonderful resources in our schools, and thank the superintendent for being here, and thank the schools for doing this. So that's a good day. Good day for Lebanon. Good day for Lebanon School. Good day for Lebanon Police Department. Okay. Continue to have a great spring. As I guaranteed, there will be no more snow. I said that last program.
And no more snow days.
Yep. The chips are on the table by the city manager. I will guarantee you no more snow. So have a great April here. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.